Welcome to Absolute Trust Talk with your host, Kirsten Howe. Absolute Trust Talk brings you tips, tools, advice, and interviews to help you build a reliable knowledge base on estate planning, business, and finance to start preparing for your future today.
Hello and welcome to Absolute Trust Talk. I am Kirsten Howe. This is our audio and video podcast here at Absolute Trust Council. My guest today is Miguel Delgado, and this is our second episode with my guest. Miguel is a CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and a Senior Wealth Advisor at Legacy Wealth Management. Miguel began his finance career in 2006 and quickly became a trusted advisor. By 2012, just 6 short years, he started his own independent practice, and he's worked with over 200 families over the years. His efforts were recognized by the Cal State University East Bay Alumni's 40 Under 40 Award. So, really a go-getter. He's a young guy making his mark. And that award highlights his influence and expertise in financing even before turning 40. And I don't know how old you are, but that's an impressive thing. And you don't have to share. As listeners know, this is my second episode here with Miguel. And in the previous episode, we talked about some of the tax and financial strategies and issues that Miguel works on with his business owner clients. Miguel, welcome again, and thank you again. You also help your business owner clients with some of their concerns that are maybe less directly about taxes and money and more about the long-term viability of the business. So my first question about that is, how do you even discover these concerns that your business owner clients have?
Questions, lots of good questions. There's a difference between asking lots of questions and good questions, right? Try to get them to talk about their business in ways that maybe other people haven't asked them questions about their business. Like, what's fun about the business? What's not so fun? What's going well and what's not going so well? Well, what's worrying you from the business? When I first started asking these questions, I thought that the answers that I would be getting were related to finances. Oh, I'm paying too much in taxes, or oh, my portfolio is not doing good enough. Problems that financial advisors most commonly solve.
Typically, yeah.
But what I found is that for many business owners, some of the biggest problems they're facing are employee challenges in making sure that they're doing best for their customers and clients. Could be marketing things, could be things that have nothing to do with what I do, right? But as a wealth advisor, wealth manager, who I see that role as somebody who's all-encompassing finance, right? I want to know every aspect of my client's financial situation because everything's tied together, even some of the things that may not be so obvious. So yeah, asking them questions about the business, finding out, discovering what their intentions were with the business in the beginning. Was it just to generate cash flow? Is this to help make the world a better place? And then stress test, ask questions that stress test the company under different circumstances. Like, for example, if they say, I don't want my top employee to leave, well, what are you doing to keep them? Questions like that. Or, my spouse isn't working now. They have maybe experience in a different industry. My question for them is, well, do you have a succession plan in place? If your spouse can't run the day-to-day operations of the business, what's going to happen if you pass away and now they become owners of that business? So just different questions that allow me and them to kind of determine, is this business ready for any potential risks that may come up?
Yeah, I think you're right. You got to ask good questions like, what would happen to the business if something happened to you? Just kind of make them slow down and think about that for a minute. And okay, so how are we going to address that problem? I like that one about talking about the spouse too, because very often the spouse is doing something else. They're not involved in the business.
Yeah, another one is they sometimes talk about how they want to sell the business down the road. And I'll ask them, well, how much do you think the business is worth now? How much do you need to sell the business for? This is a key question, which is most people don't know the answer to. How much do you need to sell the business in the future to be able to provide you with the income or the benefits that you need, right? And so they might know what the business is worth now. They may have an idea of what they think the business will be worth in the future, but what do they need is kind of a deeper question.
Yeah, and just breaking that down. But why do you need that? You want to travel. You got a mortgage. You got this and that. They need to understand those two things are related to each other.
Mhm.
What is the business worth and what do I need? The most common concerns that your clients share with you about their business, what would you say?
Yeah. So again, I thought when I was initially fielding these types of questions, I was hoping and expecting that I would get concerns like taxes. Well, great, I have a solution for that. Or investments. Well, great, I have a solution for that. But the most common concerns I feel related to the business is employee retention. Again, customer satisfaction, reviews, the business reputation, and then for the business owner, it's work-life balance. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh yeah, my spouse is telling me that I should work less, or
Yeah.
when am I going to retire? Or I keep talking about hiring a management team, and I'm still working 7 days a week or 5 days a week, whatever it is. So those are that family pressure of getting that work-life balance is a big one.
Yeah, I can totally relate to all of those things. And I think that I always say that one of the best things and at the same time, the most challenging things about owning a business is having employees. And even employees are great because they help. They take away from you the things that you don't have time to do or don't want to do, but they bring their own, challenges. And even once you have things humming along pretty well in the business, you got steady cash flow. I think if you're a small business owner, never really stop worrying about that key employee deciding to leave and then the whole business craters back onto your desk. So what kinds of ideas do you like to explore with your clients around that subject of employee retention, I guess?
Yeah. So I usually start off with learning what they have in place now, right? Is what they have. So most common type of setup that I see is, the employees have a salary or they have an hourly wage. The next thing that comes with that is some employee benefits, like maybe health insurance and 401k plans. And then after that, it could be bonuses, right? Those are typically the most common things that I see. And so when I hear a business owner talk about how one of their biggest fears is a key employee leaving the business, seeing these traditional types of benefits aren't usually good enough. It doesn't make it sticky enough, right? If somebody's getting a bonus, when is the best time for an employee that's already been thinking about leaving to leave?
The day after the bonus.
The day after the bonus, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've seen it happen. And so it's not sticky enough. So sometimes we'll talk about things like deferred compensation agreements. There's different kinds. It allows the employer to put a vesting schedule. It incentivizes the employee to stay. It also gives some tax benefits to the business when the reward is finally fully vested and given to the employee. Looking at other fringe benefits, now and age, business owners have to be willing to compete. I've seen things like pet insurance. Not saying that every business owner has to offer that, but looking at the fringe benefits they have available, if they're already doing all these other things, maybe look at their fringe benefits, the cafeteria plan, if you will. Are they matching the 401k plan? That could be another thing. Then there's what I call golden parachute plans. They're also known as golden handcuff plans, but I like the golden parachute plan a little bit better.
What is an example of that would be covered by a golden parachute plan?
It's a perk that you can discriminate against employees.
You don't have to offer it to every employee.
Exactly. Yeah.
I got it. Okay.
So you can discriminate in that sense. It's a special type of plan that you can select a given number of employees to give it to, but it really incentivizes the employee to stay. You can add a vesting schedule to it. The company can get a tax deduction for this type of benefit. Usually it's in the form of a deferred compensation plan. Sometimes it could be stock options, phantom stock options. There's different ways to develop, call it a golden parachute plan. But the concept is there's a benefit that's going to be given at a later time. The employee has to stay for this period of time in order for them to get that benefit. Throughout that time, they'll vest a portion into it. And the business gets a little bit of protection because if the employee leaves, they get to keep whatever funds were not fully vested, right? So if the employee does stay, then the reward is given. The company then usually takes a tax deduction at that point. So there's different benefits at different time periods for both the business and the employee. And then there's other ways of structuring it where you could even add insurance, like life insurance, for example. This helps protect the business if the employee dies during that period of time. The company doesn't have to worry about going out and finding a replacement. Well, they'll still have to find a replacement, but the life insurance benefit can help fund that new employee.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think that salary bonus, 401k, those even health insurance, that's kind of expected. That's like the standard. That's not enough to make somebody stay anymore. That's what people expect. And they will get that wherever they go. So I guess you do have to be
Especially in California. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Right. You do have to be a little more creative, I suppose. Okay. So other things that we've talked about, long-term care insurance, business owners can offer that to their own employees, offer to pay for that for their employees.
Yeah, they can offer to pay for a lot of things. Long-term care insurance is one of them. When it comes to long-term care insurance, it's very expensive. Usually, you don't see it be done unless it's a C corporation type of entity because they get the tax benefits for it. Under any other form of entity, like an S corp, partnership, or LLC, they're not going to get the same tax benefits. So they just have a huge expense with no real benefit for it. So it doesn't make a lot of sense for them. But disability insurance is a good one to consider because it's not that expensive. Group long-term disability insurance policies are very affordable. And I think it's a way for the employer to show that they care about the employee. The reality is there's a probability that some employees will get disabled. And if that happens, the only thing they have to fall back on is the California state disability insurance,
Right. Right.
which isn't very much. It's taxable and it's not long term. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. One thing that I find very commonly is that I have a business owner who has a co-owner. They don't have any kind of buy-sell agreement between them, or even if they have one, there's not really any way for it to be implemented. And I'm going to throw that over to you, Miguel, to talk about what that even means, the implementation of a buy-sell agreement.
Starts off with, first of all, having something in writing, right? You have to have a buy sell agreement that's usually drawn up by an attorney. But then there's the funding part of it, right? And if I can kind of go back for a moment, when most people think about a buy sell agreement or a succession plan, they're usually thinking about it around the context of death, right? If I die, what's going to happen to the business? But the reality is that there's a lot of different forms of exit from the business. And it's not always death. It's actually not the most common form of exit of a business, right? There's disability, there's a divorce, there's simply somebody wanting to retire and not wanting to be part of the business anymore. There could be a number of reasons why somebody exits the business. And so if there's partners in place, different owners of a business, you should agree ahead of time how the business or that owner's shares are going to be bought or redistributed amongst the rest of the owners in the event of that exit. Planning that in advance allows for just so much more peace.
Yes, planning in advance is always better than scrambling in a crisis.
Right. So funding the buy sell really depends on the type of exit, right? If it's a death, the easiest way and the most affordable way to fund that is using life insurance.
Okay. And by funding, what we're talking about is the agreement says if one of us dies, the company buys our shares back. For example, life insurance could pay money to the company to enable it to buy those shares.
Correct. It depends on how
how it's structured. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be a cross purchase sell or it could be an entity. Yeah. But let's say you and I own a business and the business is worth $1 million and we own 50-50 of it. If I exit the business, you're going to either have to decide, well, do I want his shares or are we going to allow another investor, a third party to come in?
Yeah.
If I die, it's going to be my spouse. Do you want to work with my spouse?
Does she partners with my spouse? Yeah.
Right. So those are a lot of the things that have to be addressed up front, right? Is how is this going to be handled? And then the funding, of course, is where is the money going to come up to pay that $500,000 or whatever the business is worth at that time? How is the business going to be valued? Are we agreeing on it now or do we agree on a formula? Because if there's a divorce or a death, the surviving spouse or the other spouse on the other side of the divorce may disagree on the valuation of the business.
Right. You don't get to decide. There's a judge.
Exactly.
A law judge who will decide.
Yeah. And so then permitting or allowing the funding of it could be either, we agree that we're going to take out a loan or we're going to use this insurance policy to help pay for that or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Okay. And so what you do here in this context is so valuable that you kind of dig in and see, do we even have a buy-sell agreement? What does it say? Is it adequate? And let's talk about how to fund it. And you can help your clients find the right solutions. Whatever their agreement is, make sure it is their agreement and then help them figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, these are great conversations because a lot of times it starts off with one of the business owners who I'm working directly with, maybe with their personal finances. We start getting the business involved. And now all of a sudden I'm talking to the other partner or partners who maybe haven't done any personal financial planning on themselves. And we're asking all these questions. And at some point, I typically get the question of, well, what else do you do? And so that's great for me because sometimes it could turn into being able to work with more than just one partner. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And helping the business, helping the business helps both partners, even if one of them's not your client indirectly.
Exactly.
All right. Miguel, I wanted to ask you one last thing before we go. In our conversations before we went on recording, you mentioned to me a product that I have not been aware of, and I think it would be informative for our audience if you told a little bit about this. It's disability buyout insurance.
Yeah. So in the context of the buy-sell agreements, it's a little known fact, right? I mentioned how most people, when they think about exiting a business, they think about it in the form of a death or retirement. But disability is actually a lot more common than death. And so if there's multiple partners involved, the same way that we use life insurance to fund the buy-sell of a business, if somebody gets disabled and they're not able to return back to work, their shares are going to have to either be redistributed back to the company or to the other shareholders. So how is that done? How do the other shareholders, or how does the business buy out that partner or that owner? And one of the ways to do that is by using a disability buyout policy. So the definitions of when the policy is triggered is very similar to how a traditional disability insurance policy kicks in. But rather than paying a monthly benefit that is usually paid out by disability insurance policies, those policies pay out a monthly benefit to help the business owner maintain their lifestyle, pay their bills, et cetera. It replaces their income. But the disability buyout is usually handled by either a lump sum payment that goes directly to the business or the other shareholders. It can also be given as a down payment followed by some installments. You can set it up in different ways to make the premiums a little bit more affordable. But yeah, it's a very little known fact. I encourage a lot of any business owner who has a buy-sell agreement and doesn't have a disability buyout. It's not as expensive as you might think. And it's typically a lot less expensive than having to come up with the cash yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Because that could happen at any time and you might not be prepared. You might not have cash lying around to do what the buy-sell agreement requires. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you, Miguel, so much for sharing your expertise with us on working with small business owners. I personally have benefited from this conversation, and I know our audience has as well. Thank you very much. And don't forget, this will be a middle episode. We've got another episode coming up with Miguel Delgado of Legacy Wealth Management.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Absolute Trust Talk Live. If you enjoyed listening in, then don't forget to subscribe. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you may listen by searching Absolute Trust Talk. While you're there, we would also love for you to leave us a review. And then why not share your favorite episodes with family, friends, or colleagues too? You can find all of our shows and corresponding show notes by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com. You'll also find a variety of other free resources, including our ebooks, videos, blogs, presentations, and more. If you need help with your estate planning or administration, we also offer a free discovery call to help get the process started. You can find more information on booking your session by visiting absolutetrustcouncil.com/scheduling. If you join us for the broadcast, you can submit questions during the show. But if not, don't worry. You can always get in touch with us by sending a quick message to info@absolutetrustcouncil.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you soon.
This podcast is not meant to take the place of legal advice from an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you do have a legal question or issue, please consult with an attorney.